Hi everyone, I'm Soheil Mohseni. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow in sustainable energy systems at Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. I'm glad to be talking about a recent research work which focuses on the risk-based dispatch optimization of microgrids, considering the uncertainty in EV driving patterns. So it is common knowledge now that the large-scale electrification of the transport sector will result in increasingly peaky loads, and this will necessitate the integration of a large volume of capital-intensive storage infrastructure to deal with those peak loads. And also, recently, the vehicle-to-grid concept is set to provide an effective platform to unlock the storage on wheels potential of electric vehicles. But on the other hand, the vehicle-to-grid technologies will make the optimal operation of microgrids extremely challenging, and this is specifically because of the uncertainties associated with various parameters. And characterization of those sources of uncertainty while optimally dispatching a microgrid that integrates a large number of technologies in the candidate pools, such as solar PV panels, wind turbines, and hydrogen storage, batteries, supercapacitors, flywheels, and especially in a grid-connected mode, is extremely challenging. And like I said, what may well further compound such a microgrid operation problem is the consideration of the uncertainties and the associated risks arising from the characterization of those uncertainties. For example, quantifying the effects of risk-seeking and risk-averse strategies adds a significant layer of complexity to this problem. And one of the most important sources of uncertainty when dealing with the optimal microgrid dispatch problem in the presence of a large volume of EVs is the charging and discharging of electric vehicles, which has an important implications for the risk-based optimal dispatch of microgrids. So we've formulated the risk-based microgrid dispatch optimization framework to consider the risks associated with the EV driving patterns. And we've parameterized the problem for a grid-connected microgrid, which is mainly driven by wind turbines and solar PV panels as renewables. It also has a point of common coupling with the wider utility network, and is backed by an on-site hydrogen storage system that consists of an electrolyzer, a hydrogen tank, and a fuel cell. And on the consumption side, we have residential loads and, of course, electric vehicle charging loads, which are assumed to be integrated into the system using a dedicated aggregator. So let's get to the risk-based optimal microgrid dispatch problem considering EVs uncertainties. We first need to define the average daily trips by EVs. So we've assumed that the average daily distance driven by EVs follows a normal distribution. And specifically, we assume that the mean of driving distance is 30 kilometers and the standard deviation is 5 kilometers during weekdays, whereas the mean of driving distance is 25 kilometers and the standard deviation is 4 kilometers during the weekend days. We also need to define the arrival and departure times of EVs. So we use the chi-square distribution functions to do so. And under these assumptions, we use the information gap decision theory to characterize the uncertainty in EVs' energy needs. We specifically employ the fractional error info gap approach out of different variations of the IGDT, or the information gap decision theory. And the info gap, the fractional error info gap basically gives the estimate of the uncertain variable considering the horizon of uncertainty under the risk-seeking and risk-averse strategies. And I mean, the value and sign of the deviation of error from the best estimate value defines the level of risk seeking and risk averse behavior associated with the decision. In other words, the risk averseness or robustness level of a decision represents the greatest horizon of uncertainty for which certain minimal requirements are always met. On the other hand, the risk seeking of a decision reflects the smallest level of uncertainty that must always be met to ensure the feasibility of solutions. Now, we can use the proposed EV uncertainty characterization method in a standard microgrid dispatch optimization problem. So the top equation shows the general risk neutral strategy, which seeks to maximize the profit of the microgrid operator, considering the net power exports back to the grid and the power sold to the customers in its service territory. And this objective function can be reformulated to reflect the risk of not storing enough energy in the EV's batteries for an average daily round trip, considering risk-seeking and risk-averse preferences of the operator or the decision maker. So the risk-neutral strategy, which is to maximize and it's our deterministic objective function, seeks to maximize the profit of the microgrid operator, and we have considered, a business plan of an energy as a service, and it can we can also consider the uncertainties in schedules of charging and discharging of EVs under the risk-seeking and risk-averse attitudes, and the strategies using the proposed info-gap approach. So we modeled this problem in using the MILP approach and employed the Simplex solver in GAMS to solve it. And now let's populate the proposed model for a hypothetical test case system. Figure A on the top left-hand side shows the forecast of solar irradiance and wind speed for a typical representative day, and figure B shows the forecasts of wholesale electricity market prices and residential load for that typical representative day. And the table in the bottom shows the driving patterns of a representative EV from 3 clusters. So we have classified the entire transportation pool or fleet into 3 main clusters, and the figure shows their characteristics. For example, EV number 6, which belongs to cluster 1, departs home on weekdays at 7 a.m. and arrives at work at 9 a.m. It then departs its workplace at 5 p.m. and arrives back at home at 7 p.m. And it has an average driving speed of 33 kilometers per hour and drives 30 kilometers per day on average during the working days. Now, let's see the optimal dispatch results. This figure shows the optimal dispatch results of the system under the risk neutral strategy. So we can see here that during the first 5 hours of the day, local wind turbine generations are converted to hydrogen and stored in the dedicated hydrogen tank. And the residential and EV charging loads are served by lower priced grid imports. Then during the morning peak hours, the excess generation is sold back to the grid. And then from our 10 a.m. onwards until 3 p.m., any surplus renewable power is allocated to filling the hydrogen tank and exporting to the grid in an optimization-based manner. However, during the coincident evening peak periods, the net residential and electric vehicle charging loads are met by fuel cell generations, and finally, during the late evening periods, the net residential loads are met by an optimal combination of the vehicle-to-grid capacity, the V2G capacity, and grid imports. And this figure shows an illustration of the battery state of charge, or a battery SOC of representative EVs from each of the three clusters. So we can clearly see here that the EV's state of charge are significantly dependent on the timing of on the time of day, and also the closeness to the morning or evening peak periods. Also, we can see that the reduction of the battery SOC happens during the late evening periods. And this indicates that the VTG capacity can play an important role in planning how to balance expected evening generation and demand for maximum profit. And now let's see the robust and opportunistic objectives and how they and their sensitivities to changes in the associated deviation factors. We can clearly see here that increasing the robustness deviation factor increases the tolerable margin of error in the forecasts of EVs power consumptions. And on the other hand, a higher profit target requires a higher deviation of the opportuneness factor from its expected value. So to come to the conclusions, we have shown that the quantification of the uncertainties in forecasts of EV charging and discharging can have a significant impact on optimal microgrid dispatch results. We have also shown that as the degree of risk averseness increases, the expected profit decreases. And on the other hand, as the degree of risk-seeking increases, the expected profit does so as well. As future work, we seek to further advance the model by characterizing other sources of parametric uncertainties. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take on any questions you might have. Thank you.